I used to relapse a lot on NoFap. From about fall 2022 to spring 2025, this year, I relapsed like multiple times a week for like 2.5 years, basically. But since then, since spring this year, 2025, I actually haven't even fapped once, which I've documented on my vlog channel. So I've made great progress. And one of the biggest concepts, which is extremely overlooked in this space that I learned about, is something called emotional frequencies, which I know it might sound a bit woo-woo, a bit fucking abstract, whatever, but let me explain, right? So I realized that I would only ever really fap when I was either bored or lonely or lethargic or like anxious or horny, like these sorts of feelings, right? I would never fap when I was happy or joyous or I was in bliss. You know, when I had just, for example, had an amazing conversation with my big brother or my friend or my parent, for example, I would not fap, you know? And you probably won't either. You will probably only fap, for example, in the morning. If you sleep in and you're sluggish, you grab your phone, you start scrolling, you start fapping. Or in the evening, if you like scroll on social media and see a bunch of fucking provocative content and stuff on TikTok, for example, then you go to bed, you have all these urges in your mind. You're in the perfect environment for sex. It's fucking dark, it's cozy, it's warm, you're basically naked. And what's going to happen? You know, you have all these you've supplied your brain with this kind of content. And of course, you're in the, like, when you are in the environment in which you're the most prone to fapping, you're going to be very vulnerable, right? And so it's probably only in a specific, like, few environments and situations where you actually fap. And you can probably think of those in your mind. Now, the thing is, there's something called escapism. And it is this concept that when we feel boredom, for example, or anxiety or loneliness, when we feel these sorts of, like, negative feelings, right? We want to escape it. Of course we do, right? Well, the thing is, the modern world has given us so many easy, cheap ways to do it. Like, for example, porn and fapping, right? You can just do it whenever you want to and escape your current reality for a couple of minutes before you nut and you want to kill yourself, basically. And the thing is, you are only going to fap really when you are in a low emotional frequency. So I'll put up a graph on screen right now of the emotional frequency ladder graph, whatever it's called. I'll put up a picture and you'll see for yourself that when you feel these sorts of negative, low vibration fucking feelings like shame or guilt or anxiety or loneliness or boredom, these things that don't feel good, that are sort of, it's hard to do productive work when you have them, right? Those are probably the only emotions, or you will probably only fap when you have those emotions inside of you. That's probably correct if you think about it. Like, what do you feel when you come home after school and you lay on the couch and you're lethargic as shit? You feel boredom and you feel tiredness, you feel fatigue because you've been in school and you've fucking done all the bullshit there. Of course you get it when you come home, plus the fact that you have your postprandial dip, which is kind of like a biological thing that a lot of people have, that between like 1 and 4 p.m., like, at least for me, I lose quite a lot of energy. I have a lot of energy in the morning and in the evening, but in the afternoon specifically and at midday sometimes, my energy can dip, you know? And if you have that as well, then, for example, when you come home from school and you're tired as fuck, you might be lonely, you might not have that many friends and shit, then you're way more likely to start fapping. You know, like, can you get what I'm telling you right here? And so the more you ascend on this emotional frequency ladder, this emotional frequency graph, we'll call it the EFL, emotional frequency ladder. The more you ascend, the more you climb the EFL, the less likely you will be to fap. Like, if you're with your dog and you're cuddling and you're playing with your dog, right? You're not gonna fap there. I've never had a dog, but that's what I can imagine, at least. You know, you're not gonna do that. You're not gonna have like a wholesome conversation with a relative, like some family member, and then 5 seconds later go fapping. You're not gonna do that. It's almost always, at least for me, it was a slippery slope. I would come home from school, I'd be tired, I'd start watching some bullshit content, I'd start getting some nice comfort food, I would start scrolling a little bit, and then I'd see some bullshit on my phone, some provocative, like some sexual fucking pictures, some videos that are all over the internet these days. I'd see that shit, and then what would happen? Like, all the urges would accumulate. They would start building up. And so I would get into this, or rather, because of the fact that I was in this slow, lethargic, bored, lonely state, because of the fact that I didn't have anything productive to do, because of the fact that I was not getting positive momentum or positive reinforcement from, for example, having a friend with me and talking with him, or getting the positive momentum from doing some sort of work, some tasks, some workout, some business things, some homework, something that like when you're productive, you're not really gonna fap like in when you're in that state, when you're in that mode. I know this is kind of abstract and it's a bit woo, and I can't really concretely prove or explain this to you, but you just kind of have to imagine it, because at least for me, I felt it. Like I will never ever get the urge to fap during specific situations. I will only ever get them, or to be honest, not anymore, because after a little while, once you've been away from fapping for like 3 months, for example, or a little bit, the association between the original trigger and the behavior of fapping is just disconnected. So that's something very beautiful. But in the beginning, for me, I would only ever fap once I got down the slippery slope. I got bored or lethargic or lazy. I just ended up wasting time. And when I was lonely, for example, I didn't really have any task at hand. When I fucking like, you scroll and then you feel bad because it's not productive at all. You're just wasting time. You get this sort of dopaminergic high when you scroll or when you eat some junk food, but deep within you, it's wrong. You know that you shouldn't be doing it, and so you're more likely to continue on this path because of the fact that you feel bad for the activity that the activity that you're doing. Right? Can you imagine that? You might not even have to imagine it. You might just be able to feel it because you might be able to relate to it. At least that's how it was for me. When I got into this low emotional frequency, that is when I fapped. That is when the urges came and my willpower got drained. And it was always this slippery slope, this ball rolling downhill. I started doing something that led to something else that I'm scrolling junk food, some bullshit content, like all of it combined. Like when you are in this mode, when you're lethargic and you're just sitting and doing nothing, nothing productive, you're way more likely to fap. And so if we can eliminate free time and these pockets of dead space just in our calendar, like for example, after school or in the evening, after you come home from your workout, in the morning, for example, if you don't have a set routine for this kind of stuff, then it's extremely easy to just slip into degeneracy. Because the more you actually the more you have the question in your mind of whether or not to fap, the more you have the decision in your mind of whether or not to go on your phone and go onto some Instagram page or some bullshit like that, the more likely you are to actually do it, because your willpower will be drained. It's called decision fatigue. Like when you have to make decisions over and over again. Should I do that? Should I indulge in this junk food? Should I do this? Like after a certain while, it just gets harder to resist the degeneracy, right? You can probably relate to that. You try to resist fapping for a long time, but then you just stay in this like debate basically in your mind, like, should I fap? No, of course not. No. But it's so nice. Oh, no, of course not. The more you do that, the more likely you are to fap. So don't do that shit, man. And I know it's a slippery slope. It comes up creeping upon you, right? It's quite vicious. You can call it the devil. You don't like whether you're religious or not, but like you can feel the energy creep inside of you, and you have to deflect it as soon as possible. If you played the game Overwatch and you know the character Genji, he uses his blades, his samurai swords to deflect all the attacks that come his way. And that's kind of like how we need to do it with NoFap. We're doing some sort of activity, and then we feel the slightest bit of like boredom or like this lazy, just fucking, what's the right word? Like just weird and like fucking lazy energy, lethargic energy creep upon us. We have to deflect it and meditate back on the task at hand. If you're doing some sort of homework or some business work and you get the urge to quickly check your phone and start scrolling a little bit, don't fucking do it, man. Resist it. Because if you indulge, you're way more likely to indulge in the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And all these bad habits, they're intertwined. Because the thing is, if you allow yourself to slip down into one of the slopes, then you're way more likely to do it with the other one. Because of the fact that you're familiarizing yourself in the short term. You're opening your phone, you start scrolling, and then all of a sudden you're in more of a lazy mode. You feel more tired and bored because you don't actually feel good when you scroll. It might feel pleasurable, but deep within you, you feel bad. And so then you go to the next thing, and it's just fucking awful, you know? So don't go down that fucking rabbit hole. And so if we can eliminate free time and create a big routine for our entire day to make sure that we don't end up in these pockets of time in which we are more prone to degeneracy, that will be the best case scenario. Now, I go into way more detail about this kind of stuff in the 90-day NoFap protocol, which is my step-by-step blueprint where I lay out all the tactics that I use to go from fapping like multiple times a week for years whilst being on NoFap, whilst knowing about the negative consequences of it, to not even having fapped for like 6 months plus. And so I really think it's an awesome fucking piece of education that I've made. I think it's a fucking steal, and I hope to see you inside, bro. You can check it out in the description. Now, in terms of creating a routine and eliminating free time, the way that I've done it is that I've gone into Google Calendar and created a timetable for my entire day, my entire week. Now, first of all, when you hear the term eliminating free time, you might think that's bad or that it'll be boring. But actually, the thing is, when you eliminate free time, all of your day is just packed with productive habits, like just stacked on top of each other, and you go from one task to the next, to the next, to the next, and you check the boxes. That is when you're going to feel good, actually. Because the thing is, you know it. Like when you scroll, when you fap, you have this voice within you that's telling you that this is not right, man. Come on, you know that, right? And so it's actually way more fun to be more productive. If you've never been productive in your life, then you won't know, of course. But if you have, you know the kind of high or the sustained high, the sort of the bliss that you feel when you're just productive throughout your entire day. You're just making progress towards your goals, right? And so we want to eliminate free time because if we have a task at hand all the time, when we know exactly what to do, when we have everything planned out, we are way less likely to fap because like we will not get the debate in our mind of whether or not to fap, if that makes sense, right? And so we don't allow ourselves to even get into that line of thinking. So the way that I've done it is that I've created a timetable in Google Calendar, which is kind of like imagine just in school or in the military, they have this kind of like hour by hour routine timetable calendar, whatever you want to call it. Like, for example, in the military, it'll be, you're going to wake up at 5 a.m., then you're going to jump in the lake and swim for 2 hours. Then you're going to march with your fellow troops, whatever, right? Some shit like that. And then you're going to eat fucking raw oats, 12 kilograms of raw oats. That's what you're going to do, man. Fucking hell. And then in school, for example, you might be like, yeah, at 8 a.m. you're going to have English, 9 a.m. you're going to have this fucking math, 10 you're going to have natural science, and then social studies, then lunch, then history, then fucking biology, whatever, right? The key point here is not the environments themselves. I actually quite dislike both of them. I wouldn't look forward at all to join the fucking army. I don't know why anyone would really do that. It's for the discipline, man. I want to be more disciplined. It's like, not really. You can get that by yourself. You don't have to go and spend a year doing fucking military service like a lot of people in my age in Sweden do. I just don't find it appealing at all, but some people might. Now, in terms of school, I don't like school either. I think the modern education system is quite retarded, although that it's a bit of out of the scope of this video. But the key point is not that these two environments are particularly like aspirational to be in, but more that they are extremely productive in terms of the people that go there. That's undeniable. Like this kind of timetable where you don't get to decide in the moment what you're going to do. You already have it planned out, or the timetable is given to you. When you have that, like what happens? You are just streamlining your entire process in terms of your work. You don't have to think, you can just act. And it's extremely powerful. And there's a reason why these two big establishments have this kind of stuff. Like it undeniably makes you more productive when you have planned out what you're going to do beforehand. Now, the way I've done this is that I've gone into Google Calendar, just blocked out every single hour every day. Like, for example, at 6, you're going to wake up, you're going to do your morning routine. At 8, you're going to go to school. At 3, you're going to have your first meal of the day. Then you're going to go to the gym at 4. Then you're going to have your second meal at 6. Then you're going to do your nighttime routine at 8, for example, or at 7. When you have this, like it's so powerful, man. Because the thing is, when you're on your timetable and you just follow the fucking routine and you don't change anything in the moment, you're like, nah, man. That version of me who made the timetable, who made the routine, who plotted out every hour what I was going to do, he was in an unemotional state, right? Because the thing is, when you're in the moment, wind might be blowing, I'm not sure, but it doesn't really matter. If you decide in the moment what the fuck you're going to do, you're going to be way more likely to do something that you're not supposed to do because you have emotions in the moment, right? You feel something in the moment, which may sway your decision-making calculus, right? But if you are making your decisions when you are in an unemotional state, you're making your decisions way before you're actually going to do the activity. You don't have the emotional bias of the moment, right? So you can be way more masculine and unemotional and sort of stoic about what you're going to do throughout your day. And so this is one of the biggest things that I've done. I fucking love it. I plot out my ideal day. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect on the first try. You can see what things you want. Like if you don't, for example, like going to the gym at this time, then just change it, you know, change it a little bit around, but make sure that relatively quickly you have a routine that you can trust, that you can just blindly obey because you know logically that this is what you're supposed to be doing. When you have that, it's such a fucking superpower, man. And so also what you can do, what I've done is that at the specific times when I would usually FAP, I have specific routines. You know, you don't like, you might, for example, have a big block for work, for example, just on your business or your homework or your some school, right? But then you might have, for example, like a big list of things that you're going to do at nighttime before you go to bed, because that's usually when you're the most prone to fapping, right? You're most vulnerable. And so, for example, what I have is that I have my nighttime routine and my morning routine, because historically those have been the times when, like, if I nail those 2 times, for me at least, I'm usually good. Or like nowadays, I'm always good, of course. But like back then when I fapped, if I would nail my nighttime routine and my morning routine, everything else would kind of flow nicely. Because if I nail my nighttime routine, then I will not sleep in because I get enough sleep, right? And I won't stay up late and risk fapping. And at nighttime, I do things like journaling and reading and listening to lo-fi music, like fucking just serene music that puts me into a more peaceful state. If I do that, I'm way less likely to fap than if I, for example, scroll before I go to bed. And then in the morning, I wake up at the time that I said I was going to wake up at, and I hop in the cold shower. I get some nice positive momentum. I collect my first win of the day. I do some meditation. I go out into the cold. You know, if you do that, you set like the momentum going, the ball rolling, you know? And so for me, at least in the morning and at nighttime and also in the afternoon, those were the 3 biggest places for me where I was, if I nailed those, then I was good, you know? But if I fucked up, then I was pretty likely to fap. If I, for example, stayed up late, I was pretty likely to fap. If I fucked up my morning routine, if I slept in, I would not usually fap, but I would a lot of the times fap. I was way more likely to fap than if I had not. So my action step, or the action step that I want to give you in this video, is to go into Google Calendar or some sort of note-taking app and make your own timetable. Like, make it right now, dude. What the fuck are you waiting for, right? Just plot out your ideal day. If everything went perfectly and you did all the work towards your goals that you want to get done, how would that day look? And in Google Calendar, you can set that on repeat so that you don't have to remake it all over, like every day or whatever. And if your day changes throughout the week, then you can just you can plot out your week and then you can set that on repeat. Or you can just have it in some note-taking app and write work or gym, depending on what day it is, right? You can circumvent these sorts of technical issues very easily. And so it's all free. I don't gain anything from you doing just going to Google Calendar or your note-taking app, Notion, whatever, and write down what you're going to do throughout the day and throughout the week, and just try to follow it to the best of your ability. And whenever you feel like you're slipping out of your timetable, you're slipping into this rut mode, you're getting into some sort of low frequency, you're getting into a low emotional frequency, you're descending down the what the fuck did we call it? EFL, emotional frequency ladder. When you descend that, when you go down, as soon as you realize, notice it, just fucking snap yourself back into the timetable. Just stare at it, fucking look at it 100 times a day. Like, you're going to have this thing at this time, you're going to do this at this time, and just try your absolute best to follow it. Now, you might not be perfect in the beginning, right? That's not what I'm expecting. But as long as you make progress, as long as you apply progressive overload to this, and at a certain point, preferably quite quickly, you can follow this day to 95%, 99, 100%. You get into those fucking really high, really productive scores in terms of percentages for how much for how long or how much of your day you actually followed. When you get to that point, I can promise you it'll be so much easier to stop fapping. I'll tell this, man. I'll see you in the next one.